We've been hearing about this for months. I want to get into it. Nick Caserio actually mentioned it yesterday, the dreaded gauntlet that the Texans got to go through in December. It is the Locker Room, number one source for Texans digital content. Not at NRG today, neither of the Texans. They're on a bye. And they got an interesting opportunity in front of them. Some would say an interesting challenge. I say an interesting opportunity. Nick Caserio brought up something or acknowledged something that's been acknowledged now for damn near 8 months about the Texans schedule. This was Nick Caserio. This was one of the final questions he was asked yesterday, and he talked about that dreaded stretch, 3 games in 10 days.
So after the bye, you guys have 3 games in 10 days against rather tough.
Thanks for the reminder. Yeah.
All right, so there you go. So he's acknowledging, a lot of people have acknowledged how bad this stretch is going to be. It's the worst thing possible, 3 games in 10 days. And I agree, it's not ideal, especially with the teams you're going against. You are coming off the bye, but it's not ideal. But the Texans might have an opportunity to take that thing that as soon as the schedule was released and even up to right before the bye, the thing that has been spoken about as some sort of dreaded thing and some sort of major obstacle, they could take that and they could actually make that an advantage. And here is how they can do it. Step 1, you got to win your division. And the Texans right now, the magic number to win the division is 2. Unfortunately for them, they weren't able to fully take advantage and wrap it up like Buffalo did. But the magic number is 2. What does the magic number mean? It means any combination of Texans wins and Colts losses that adds up to 2. And the Texans are the division champs, which means they'll host a playoff game. And then round 2, they'll have to go to either Kansas City or Buffalo, which is going to be tough no matter what. But we already know they're not going to catch the 1 or 2 seed. So right now, it's between the 3 and 4 seed, which there might not be much of a difference. So step 1, they've got to win the division. The magic number is 2. Here's where the good news comes in. The Miami Dolphins are coming to Houston. The Texans are going to be coming off of a bye. We don't know where Miami will be sitting in the playoff picture, but chances are it's going to be likely almost borderline done and impossible for them to get in the playoffs. So the Texans got the Dolphins in that same week. The Colts coming off their bye, they're going to Denver to take on the Denver Broncos. So let's just pretend that the Texans win and the Colts lose. Texans win the division. Let's pretend the Texans win and the Colts win. Then it would take a Texans win the next week in Kansas City, which far-fetched. I'm damn sure not betting on that. Or then a Colts loss the next week, and you would wrap up the division. So that would be step 1. And if that does happen, and this is where you turn that negative into a positive, if that does happen, and the Texans do have control of the division, and we know they're going to be hosting a playoff game, then why even make your team play 3 games in 10 days, especially against the Baltimore Ravens? Take that thing that we've been talking about as some sort of obstacle and some sort of bad thing and make it an advantage. Give yourself basically 2 bye weeks. We talk about how late the bye week is. Give yourself basically 2 bye weeks. Rest up against the Baltimore Ravens. Now, this is a big if. We don't know if the Texans, if they're going to play like they did before the bye. It's hard to imagine them beating any of these 3 teams. But if they have the division and they are the AFC South champs before the Baltimore game, why force it? Why force Joe Mixon to go out there and face the Baltimore Ravens? Why force Nico Collins to go out there? And there's a lot of hardos that'll say you don't throw a game. I'm not throwing a game. I am providing the Texans with one of the biggest advantages that you can potentially have when it comes to playing late in the season. Because they're not going to have some advantages when they start facing these better teams. But if you can get your guys ready to go and you give your guys an extra 2 weeks off to get fresh, coming off a game against Kansas City, by the way, then who says no? My question would be this. If they have the division wrapped up, what is the payoff for going all in against Baltimore? Is that imaginary hardo football players got to go play? Because 3 games in 10 days is not normal. Is it the difference between the 3 and 4 seed? Maybe so. Maybe you think the difference between the 3 seed and the 4 seed is just significant. Let me put it this way, though. If the playoffs started today, the Pittsburgh Steelers at the 3 seed, they would have to go to Buffalo, and the Texans would have to go to Kansas City. There's a strong case that you might actually rather go to Kansas City than Buffalo. Not going to pick them to win either game, but there's a strong case for that. So what's the real difference in that? What's the payoff for going all in against Baltimore? That's the other question. What is it? What's the payoff for resting? Payoff for resting is that you get your guys healthy at the end of the season. And that's really what the Texans need. They need to be healthy. They need to have the best version of stuff. They need to be playing well also. Yeah, you got to go have a good showing against Kansas City. But why have your guys go to Kansas City and play in one of the toughest places and then face the Baltimore Ravens if the small payoff is the 3 seed versus the 4 seed? Ice up. There's 3 big advantages that you can have in the playoffs. Texans aren't going to have these advantages against the elite teams that we're talking about. And I still put the Ravens up there because they own the Texans and they're battle tested. And they have a 2-time MVP quarterback. But when I talk about elite squads, I'm talking about Kansas City, I'm talking about Buffalo, and I'm talking about the Ravens. And there's 3 advantages, 3 of the biggest advantages you can have late in the playoffs. Advantage 1 is quarterback. All 3 of those teams have that advantage over the Texans. We hope CJ Stroud gets to that point. He's not there yet. He might be able to flip the switch. We've seen young quarterbacks like Joe Burrow flip the switch late in the season. But as of right now, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, those 3 teams are going to have the advantage at quarterback. Coach would be advantage number 2. Andy Reid, John Harbaugh, Sean McDermott. DeMeco's not as battle-tested as those guys. I think DeMeco's going to be a really, 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 really good coach, and I think he's definitely got potential to get into the class with Harbaugh and McDermott, but he's not battle-tested. So they have the battle-tested coaching advantage as well. And then there's the third advantage, rest. There's a reason that these teams play over the course of a whole season to get a first-round bye. And there's a reason that's what they're striving to do. The Texans can get rest if they wrap up the division. Because here's the other thing. The teams above them that we just mentioned, Kansas City and Buffalo, they're battling for rest. They're battling for home field advantage. Texans aren't going to catch either one of those teams. One game separates those 2 teams, and Buffalo is looking up at Kansas City in the standings, but they own the tiebreaker. So they're not going to be resting up during the season. One of them is going to be able to rest the first week of the playoffs. But as far as eliminating like the gauntlet that you have to go through in the regular season, and I don't know how untraditional their schedules are, but the 3 games in 10 days, the Texans have the luxury of perhaps eliminating that and making it a strength. So that's one of the advantages that of the 3 most important ones that you would have over those teams. So if the Texans wrap up the division, they can take the thing that we've been talking about for all these months, all that dreaded 3 games in 10 days, that's going to be terrible. They can take that and they can make that a positive. All I heard after the bye was how much rest they needed. Man, this bye is perfect. They need this bye. And then you hear Nick say, oh, man, don't remind me. DeMeco mentioned it too. Oh, we got a dreaded 3 games in 10 days. You don't have to do it. You don't have to be a hardo if you take care of business. Now, unfortunately for them, they had the opportunity to do that against the Titans, against the Jets, against the Lions, to where it would be a foregone conclusion that they would be able to take advantage of this opportunity they have to rest up and avoid that 3 games in 10 days. They don't have that anymore. It's not completely in their control unless they win their first 2 games. And if that happens, it's a no-brainer. You go to Kansas City and win to clinch the division, ice up, enjoy, take 2 weeks off, and then it's a nice little tweak up against the Titans the final week of the season, and then figure it out. But that is something that the Texans need to do if they are able to do it. Now, I will say this, and this is my confession before I get out of here. I got to confess this. Watch this. These are my confessions. It might not matter, because let's be honest, if the Texans play like they did that last stretch that we witnessed before this bye, it's hard to imagine them winning too many games against good teams. We'll see how it goes, but they have a massive opportunity to turn a rough situation into a great one. It's a locker room #1 source for Texans digital content, always on the scene. Be sure to follow along. Be sure to subscribe to the SNL channel, the new SNL channel. It's pinned at the top of the comments. We have the podcast every day. We're going to eventually get to where we're broadcasting, myself and Cody Stutes, on that channel. Still doing the same stuff on our channel, night stream, 10:30, all that. But be sure to subscribe to that SNL channel at the top. And always remember, when it comes to this Texan stuff, we're all in it together. Am I crazy or am I not? Let me know. Maybe not, maybe so. I think this is an opportunity for the Texans. Enjoy the bye week.